What's happening? MC Marcus Chapman here, ready to break down show number 15 in the MC25. This show was done on March 16th, 2008 on WVEE V103 in Atlanta, and it's called The Show No One Will Ever Hear Again. And it's going to actually be replaced by a different show, and I'm going to tell you why right now. All right, here's the deal. First of all, how I even got to Atlanta. I was in Chicago years prior. Because I worked at WGCI, then I went to Indianapolis late '99, went to Dallas at the end of 2000, and I came back to Chicago in 2002. So I've been back in Chicago for going on 6 years almost. And in 2007, I had actually left GCI in early 2004. I had kind of a falling out with management, and I ended up going back and working there again in 2006, in August of 2006. And so in early 2007, like around March, there was what we call a regime change. Management changed, some new people came in, and basically I was there all of 2007. I was doing weekend work and doing a lot of filling in during the week and even on other weekend shifts. And the thing about it, in the 90s, when you work part-time in Chicago, you could make extra money hosting parties. And in the early 2000s, that kind of stopped for a couple of different reasons. And then in 2007, the union contract kicked in. WGCI got added to the union. And so that increased the payment, the salary, but it didn't make it where you could host more events because it just wasn't nothing happening. And so there's really not a lot of money in part-time radio, especially compared to weekday radio. If you're on Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday, you're going to make a whole lot more money than if you're just doing Saturdays or Saturday and Sunday, something like that. So you need other things going to sustain yourself financially. And in 2007, it became very difficult for me to do that. The union contract, with them increasing the hourly pay helped, definitely. But I had a hard time getting anything else going. And the new management wasn't really interested in having me do anything beyond just part-time work. They actually passed me up toward the end of 2007 for like 3 different jobs on the station. At one point, I even volunteered to do the traffic in the morning. I just wanted to do something where I could have, more income coming in, and they wasn't trying to hear that. The message was kind of muted but clear. It was like, if you didn't get yours under the old regime, you're not going to get it now. So just have fun doing your weekend shifts, and that's it. And so it was it was really messed up. I didn't really want to leave Chicago, but things just weren't really working out. Atlanta was a market I had always been interested in. I actually almost went there back in 2004. And the program director at that time was a cat named Tony Brown. And me and him had talked off and on for about 3 years up to that point. But then when it was time for him to really bring me in, he kind of was, he wasn't making it happen. And he eventually passed me off to somebody else who actually was on vacation. So it just never ended up happening. And then about 2 years later, he got replaced by Reggie Rouse at V103 in Atlanta. And Reggie, I had contact with him back in 2000 when I was in Indianapolis. He was at WPGC in DC at the time. And I was one of the people that they were looking at because they had Tigger doing the 6 to 10 night show, and they had a cat named Adimu doing afternoons, and both of them were on BET at the time. And that was when BET was about to make the move from DC to New York. So the radio station wasn't sure if they were going to lose one of those guys or both of them or what have you. So they started looking around at different people who they could possibly get to replace one or both of them. I was one of the people they were interested in, but at the time, my contract wasn't going to be up until September of 2000. And this was like maybe March, April at the time. So they ended up losing Adimu. I think he went to LA, and then they moved Tigger to afternoons, and then they created a new night show with some people who were already working at PGC. And but I was still on the radar. So I had stayed in contact with Reggie Rouse for a long time. And when he got to V103 in Atlanta, I talked to him then. And, we communicated off and on. And I expressed interest in coming down there. And once I really decided that I wasn't going to be able to do anything else in Chicago, they weren't really trying to do nothing with me. And it was a struggle. And, I just felt like I needed to make a change. I really didn't want to leave, like I said, but it just felt like it was necessary. So in March of 2008, I moved to Atlanta. And I remember when I told him I was going to come down there, I remember his exact words were, let me know when you get here. So, it was, and not only that, I knew some other people who were down there. I got a cousin down there, cousin Mikey, and I had some other friends down there and people who were involved in the club scene. Because the thing, I knew Atlanta was huge with clubs. And even though if I went to V103 in Atlanta, I knew I wasn't going to be on every day, but I also knew that I could make extra money hosting parties. Because in Atlanta, even if you on once a week, 2 o'clock in the morning, you could host some events and make some more money off of that. So I knew that that was a possibility, and I felt like it was just going to be a fresh new start. I could work my way in. I definitely believed in my skills and experience. That wasn't no issue for me. So I went ahead and moved down to Atlanta. And I remember DJ Cowboy, who mixes for V103, he picked me up from the airport. I believe it was like on a Wednesday when I got there. And then that weekend, hit up several different clubs and was networking with people and everything. And so when I got there, I remember I talked to Reggie, and he had, at the time, he was holding down V103, but he was also traveling back to PGC in DC because I think they didn't have a PD at the time. So he was doing a lot of traveling back and forth, and he was going out of town, but he was like, call me on Monday. So I called him on Monday. I went down to the station, I believe that Tuesday, and, met with him and everything. And at first I met with the music director. I believe the cat's name was Amir Boyd. I think that was his name. And met with Amir, then met with Reggie, and they set it up for me to come in and audition they were going to have me audition that Sunday night going into Monday. So that early Monday morning from 2 to 5. So that would have been March 17th. But when Saturday came, they changed it and they asked if I could come in that night and do March 16th, which was Saturday night, Sunday morning. And for some people that might have thrown them off, but for me it made it even better because I knew a Saturday night in the ATL was going to be a lot more popping than a Sunday night. So I was like, I was kind of geeked up about it. I'm like, yeah, okay, let's get it popping. So I remember my cousin picked me up, went down to the radio station, and I went on the air, and there was a girl in there. I believe her name was Tanisha. I can't remember. She was working at the station at the time. She wasn't an on-air personality, but she was the person who was in there kind of helping me out. And matter of fact, let me backtrack because when I went down to meet with Reggie, I sat in with Greg Street. Now, I knew Greg Street from working at K104 in Dallas back in 2002. So I went in and sat in with Greg. I wasn't talking to nothing, but I was learning their board, learning the equipment, learning how to run it. It wasn't that different from what I was used to. And so I had the equipment part down. So when I did my audition on March 16th, I actually ran everything myself. A lot of times when a person and on their personality auditions for another station, somebody who already works there will run the equipment and that person on the air can just focus on the talking. And that was the plan. But I've always been a person, I prefer running my own board. And because I knew it, I felt comfortable. So I was like, I got it. I'm just going to do it myself. And that way I could handle things like I wanted to. And that particular show I did, that was one of the best shows I ever had. I remember it. I remember one break in particular. Snoop Dogg had a new song out, Sensual Seduction. I think the dirty version was Sexual Eruption, but the radio version was Sensual Seduction. It had like maybe like 23, 24 seconds on the intro. I remember talking over there, having a great talk break over that. I got a lot of phone calls, interacting with people, and it was a great show. Unfortunately, it was recorded on CD, but the person who was in the studio with me from the station, she didn't know how to make a copy of it. And so I had to leave it there for Reggie Rouse to hear because he was the PD and it was an audition. So I left it there with him. And I didn't really think anything else about it for a while. I remember the next day, it was a Sunday, there was a party going on at a bowling alley. And I remember seeing, what's my girl from Empire? I don't know what I'm talking about. Cookie from Empire. I can't remember her real name. But Cookie from Empire, before it was Empire, she was there. And I think Pac-Man Jones, I think he was playing for the Tennessee Titans. He was down there getting into it or somebody. So it was pretty festive. And I remember running into Amir Board, the music director, and he was saying that I did good. He was like, "Yeah, you got to learn the A, but you did good. You did good." And there was another cat there who had interned. He was introducing me to people as the new personality on V103. And I remember Cowboy was DJing, and he was asking me, he was like, well, is it official? Can we announce it? It wasn't official yet because nobody had talked to Reggie. But everybody just kind of assumed I was going to be on there because the show was good. And I was networking with people and everything and talking to people about hosting events, which is what I wanted to do. And so I kind of waited, and then the next week, Reggie was out of town, and there was no official word. And then as time went on, it became clear that something was happening, and it wasn't necessarily him. But what was going on is at that time, the economy was going bad. So a lot of radio companies were not making the kind of money that they were used to. So people were starting to not hire. And so it took a little while. And then I remember in June, the weekend right before the 4th of July, I got called down for a meeting. And when I got to the station, there was a female in the lobby. She was on another station. Her name was Tracy Steele, a DJ. If you watch Love and Hip Hop Atlanta, she was on there, I believe, in their second season. But this was before all that. So me and Tracy Steele, we was in there talking. We exchanged info. Then Reggie called me into the office. We sat there talking. He was asking me if Marcus Chapman was my real name. We talked about when I was available to work, how much money I was going to get paid. And this ain't the type of stuff radio stations discuss if they not really going to hire you. So it was like, okay, my assistant will give you a call on Monday. His assistant was a cat named Mark D. And so I remember that weekend going to a club. This is how big of a deal B103 in Atlanta was. I went to a club, and the bouncer was outside. And I told him, I was like, hey, I'm Marcus Chapman. I'm just came to town, about to start working on V103. I'm not there yet, but I'm about to be on there. And the station is so big, he didn't even ask me for a business card. He didn't ask me for no ID. He gave me this little card, and he was like, when you get to the door, give him this and you'll be good. And I was like, whoa. Like, he ain't even asked for no credentials or nothing. I guess he kind of knew the average cat wasn't just going to walk up to him saying that. Got in the club for free. I was kicking it and everything. And then I didn't hear anything the following week. And then when I talked to him again, he was like, we would scoop you up after the holiday because 4th of July was coming up. And so, after that, still didn't hear anything. And then like around when it got to like September, it was clear that what happened, the company that owned the station, which was CBS Radio at the time, they merged with Intercom recently, but CBS had shut down all the hiring because, they wasn't making no money. And all the other radio companies were doing the same thing. Matter of fact, Radio 1 in Atlanta, they let go of like about a third of their staff right around the same time. So no radio companies were hiring. It was bad. It was real bad. In the meantime, I was working at a car wash. I went from playing the new hit from Usher, Love in His Club, to shining the rims on Usher's truck. No joke. I remember he tipped me $2. I'll never forget that. And, I was in there working with cats who just got out of jail and, cats who wasn't really that educated. But that was the real Atlanta. A lot of people see Atlanta on TV. You see everybody balling out and at the club, throwing the money and all that stuff. Yeah, you got people living good, but you also got a lot of people in Atlanta struggling. And that's what I saw for real. I saw the real Atlanta, the cats who didn't have nothing going on, who wasn't popping the bottles, and they wasn't rappers and producers and all that kind of stuff. They were regular everyday people, and they were working hard, and I was right there with them, barely making it, barely scraping by. And then what ended up happening right before Thanksgiving of 2008, V103, something happened, they let go of Portia Fox, and so because she was doing midday. So I got called back to audition again a couple of days before Thanksgiving. But because I had been working at the car wash, I got exposed to some kind of chemicals and it messed my voice up. So my voice was shot. I had to go to the doctor and they said I had acid reflux. They gave me some pills and it cleared up, not totally 100%, but good enough. And then I ended up getting another call from Mark D the following week to come back because that show that I did, I believe it was November 26th, my content was fine, but it wasn't really me. So I have it, but I didn't even bother posting that on YouTube. And so the third show rather that I did on V103 was December 7th, 2008. Because when I tried to get the first show back from Reggie, he had lost the CD because enough time had passed. I guess he kind of forgot about it. And so even though that show is the official pick at number 15 for the MC25, it's kind of like an all-star team. Sometimes players get selected to the all-star game and they injured or they not available, and then somebody else has to take their place. So in this case, I'm replacing the March 16, 2008 show with the December 7, 2008 show, which is called Saturday Night in the ATL. It's a good show. You hear me interacting with people, having a good time with them. It's not nearly as good as that March 16 show, but it's the only documented show that I have from V103 that I felt that I even posted on YouTube, because even after I did the December 7th show, I remember I felt good. I didn't see any problem. It seemed like I was going to join the staff, but again, nothing ended up happening. They didn't even end up hiring anybody. They moved L. Duncan, who was working there, helping out Ryan Cameron in the studio afternoons. They put her in middays, and she was really young, not really experienced. It wasn't really her thing. But she's going on to be on ESPN. She's a good visual person for that. But one of my partners called her the worst to ever do it when it came to radio. I wouldn't go that far, but nothing ended up happening. And so a couple of years later, I got called back to the station. By this time, I'm working in the hotel industry. I did another show in 2010, but nothing ended up happening. And eventually, in November 2012, I ended up moving from Atlanta and relocated back to Dallas because I was up for a job there. I didn't end up getting it, but I got hired. They had something part-time, and I didn't want to do part-time, but it was better than not being in the industry at all, as I explained in another video. So what we have here at number 15 is the show no one will ever hear again. A couple of people did hear it. I know they did, but that's not available. So to replace it, we got Saturday Night in the ATL, December 7th, 2008. So you can check that out. It's the only documentation of me appearing on V103 in Atlanta. So there it is. But coming up at number 14, it goes back to a different market that I worked in. And when I was at the height of my, I won't say powers, but the peak of my radio career about 8 years earlier. But for now, check out Saturday Night in the ATL from V103 in Atlanta, December 7, 2008, a replacement for March 16, 2008. Man, I wish I still had that show, but I don't. So got to replace it. All right, here we go.